Welcome to As I Live and Grieve, a podcast that tells the truth about how hard this is. We're glad you joined us today. We know how hard it is to lose someone you love and how well-intentioned friends and family try so hard to comfort us. We created this podcast to provide you with comfort, knowledge, and support. We are grief advocates, not professionals, not licensed therapists. We are you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back again to another episode of As I Live and Grieve. To listeners around the world, literally, I check the stats all the time, and we have listeners now in 110 different countries around the world. And I'm just so happy about that. So wherever you are in the world, I hope your day at least has been so far fruitful for you as you continue to heal in your journey through grief. I hope things are going well for you. If you need support, don't hesitate to reach out to your network. If you don't have a network, for heaven's sakes, reach out to me. I'm happy to support anyone that needs it. Okay, with me today, great guest. I know, I say it every time, but it's always true, right? With me today is Marie Alessi. Marie, thanks for joining me.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited about this conversation.
Oh, that's great. It's going to be good. They're always good. And I always get so much from the new friends that cross my path. And I think you're going to be no different. So I really look forward to this conversation and your perspective on grief. So to get us started, Marie, would you just introduce yourself to our listeners? Tell them, who is Marie?
Oh, I think first and foremost, I am a mama bear in shining armor, I like to say, because that is my number one title that I wear with pride. I am a mom of 2 teenage sons. I'm also a best-selling author. I have published 3 books and counting, and co-authored another 3 books. I think my 6th one is in the making as we speak, but it's just something that I love sharing with the audience. I'm also a TEDx speaker. I've done my talk, Redefining Our Image of a Widow. If you want to look it up, I really love that one because I find it very, very important to talk about these labels. And I am also a memorial manager and a coach. So these are all my labels that I can share with you to get started.
Great. What kind of a manager was that again?
Memorial manager. So I do
a memorial
celebrations of life for people. Yeah.
Oh, very interesting. I've not heard that title before. So that's very intriguing as well.
We just came up with that because I find funeral director very dark and it feels very dusty and old-fashioned, and it's not what we do. So I have started a collaboration with Tomorrow Funerals only late last year, and the founder of it, Kate Morgan, her and my message are so aligned, and even her slogan is funerals done differently. So we said, how can we make this a more digestible and more suitable title? And we came up with this title, Memorial Manager, and I love it because that's exactly what I do. I manage the entire memorial service from start to finish. So
Yeah. Funerals overall are changing and have been changing over the last few years. I know when my husband died and we had his calling hours, and then we had the funeral, and I can use air quotes for that. It was more of a celebration of life.
That's exactly what it needs to be. I believe in that.
And I remember at one point, a close friend of my husband's had come up to the podium. People were invited to come up and just say a few words, offer a memory or anything. And one of his really good friends came up and stood in front of the podium and then just placed a cup of Tim Hortons coffee. A paper cup of coffee on the podium. I broke out in laughter because every day my husband wanted his Tim Hortons coffee. That was his one habit. And even once he was in a facility on hospice and could no longer have anything no more liquids unless they were thickened. Every day he insisted I bring him that cup of coffee so he could hold it and at least smell it.
Wow.
And his friend brought that in as his memory. And I burst out in laughter and immediately felt guilty. And then very quickly everybody said it's okay, and other people were laughing too. And it was a wonderful moment.
But isn't that interesting that people that feeling of guilt is such a learned behavior because you're not supposed to feel like that. You're not supposed to laugh at a funeral. But that's exactly it. That's exactly why we can come together to mourn a person's passing, or we can come together to celebrate a person's life. And it's polar opposite from the energy. The energy shifts in a room when we come in to celebrate someone's life. And I believe that's what we need to do, because otherwise we reduce their entire life to their moment of passing. And I don't want to do that to my husband.
Yeah.
He had such a beautiful life. I want to celebrate that.
Yep. And out of the many, many memories I have, that is going to be one of my favorite memories right there.
Yeah.
Because it demonstrates for me the impact he had on other people as well.
Yeah.
So it was really important.
I love it.
So, memorial manager, I like that a lot. Okay, let's get started.
Sure.
In your profile, I read a couple of things that really intrigued me. So the first one I would like to focus on is myths of grief. Now, I know a few that I think are myths of grief, but I'm interested in your take on this.
Yeah. So I would get this started off with, I'm a very big believer in changing our language around grief, because my whole mission is bringing more lightness into grief, changing the narrative of grief. Everything around grief right now, or up until sort of recently, I feel things are changing right now, was heavy and dark, and the language was always like, this will stay with you forever, you don't ever heal from grief. There is the 5 stages of grief that Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross never intended to be for grief. It was for anticipatory grief. She wrote them for terminally ill people. So that's one of the biggest myths, because I get asked this question quite a lot, not so much lately anymore, luckily. So things are changing. People are starting to understand that there is a different side to grief. And my whole thing is, I'm not trying to avoid grief or walk away from grief or ignore it. I know that grief and joy can live in the same house together. Like you said, you laughed, you burst out laughing with a cup of coffee, and I love that, because that's exactly such a reflection of what it's like. Things happen, we laugh, things happen, we cry. And before somebody passes, it's absolutely normal. Everybody understands the duality of it. Everybody understands that joy, happiness, sadness can all go hand in hand and happen simultaneously, or sometimes one after the other, every day, all day long. But once somebody passes, all of a sudden there's this belief, and now joy has gone, and now we're just sad, and now grief will stay with us forever. I don't buy into that BS. That's their belief system, not mine. And my belief system around that is that we can choose what we want to do. And I often then get thrown that, but I didn't choose for my husband to pass. And I'm like, my brain usually pauses when I hear that, because I'm like, well, on a spiritual level, I believe you have, because my spiritual beliefs are, we do have soul contracts. We do choose the life that we want to experience. But that aside, even if you don't have that belief, you can still choose what you do with it. And that is huge. That is really huge, because I think we are faced with this, okay, my person has died now. What's next? What do I do with that? But not everybody asks themselves that question. They say, come to society's expectation of how you deal with it, big quotation marks. And I did not buy into that. I made the choice to focus on joy, to create the happiest life possible for the boys and myself, because that's what Rob and I promised each other roughly 3 years prior to his passing, that if something was to ever happen, that's what we're going to do.
It's great that you could have that conversation about that. And I think the times they are changing, so to speak. Even 4+ years ago, when I started this podcast, there were only a few podcasts that had the topic of grief. Now there are dozens. Likewise, when we were first getting guests for our podcast, they were sometimes more difficult to find. So we would usually go to authors. Because if you wrote a book about it, you've got a story to tell, or you've got a perspective. And we always had luck with that. Now there are guests in abundance. People are more willing to share. They're more willing to talk about it. And I love that, because that was part of the reason that we did this podcast. We wanted to make grief and death easier to talk about. Easier to have those discussions as a couple. Easier to have discussions to support a friend. And easier to just understand what you go through when you grieve, and even the different types of processing and the different types of grief, between anticipatory or complex or anything like that. And it's working. It's happening. So I'm very, very excited about that. So happiness and joy. And I recently experienced another type of happiness and joy living together with grief, is on a grief cruise.
Oh, you did?
to the Caribbean.
Yeah.
I was actually a presenter on this cruise, and I thought, well, this is going to be interesting because how is this going to work?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're in the Caribbean, it's sunny, the water, the beaches are beautiful and everything. The days that we were at sea were the days that we held workshops. And it was incredible to see these people that started out so timid, heads down, not wanting to share anything. And 2 days later, they've opened up. They're smiling. We're together for dinner. They're laughing. They're sharing memories. It was absolutely beautiful.
I love that.
To see that happen.
Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful. So that was just another variety of it. And if you think that grief and joy cannot live together, go on a grief cruise.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I'm a believer.
I think even anything where people come together that grieve, I have noticed that even in Facebook groups, I used to run the movement called Loving Love After Loss from 2019 till 2023. And like even in there, it's almost like once you give people permission to heal, like things just really start to shift. And when I first started the movement, very similar what you said to the podcast, I started my podcast in grief in 2019 as well. And I remember whenever we talk about grief in a room full of people who have experienced it, that's the big difference. Because people often have an opinion about how you're supposed to grieve, big quotation marks, and those are the ones that haven't experienced it yet. And I'm saying yet because we all will experience it sooner or later. It's one thing that we have all in common. We are born, we die. That's just it. So when we have this moment of giving people permission to grieve, you see that relief that happens. It's incredible. Oh, sorry, I'm saying to grieve, to heal actually, because there is this belief that you cannot heal grief, and I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. We can heal.
Yeah.
And one of the most powerful things that anybody has ever said to me in such simplicity, because we're so used to, in the mental health space in particular, to say, it's okay not to be okay. So a line that I hear all the time, and I absolutely agree with it. It's important. It's important to hear. What was even more so important for me to hear was when Christopher, who was in my group, said to me, it's okay to be okay. Mind blowing. I'm like, yes.
Exactly. Yes. In your grief, it's okay to be okay. Yeah.
Good. And nobody tells you that.
Yeah. And in addition to having someone give you permission, you need to give yourself permission.
Yeah.
You need to accept 100%. It yourself. And then you are well on your way.
Yeah.
To finding joy again.
I agree.
It doesn't happen overnight. And I constantly tell people, be patient with yourself. Allow yourself time.
Yeah.
And you'll get there. Yeah. You will get there. And it may happen. You may not even realize that it's happening. And then all of a sudden you'll look back and you'll think, wow.
Yeah.
What a difference.
Yeah.
You really will. So other myths of grief?
Yeah, for me, one of the biggest one is what I just mentioned, that you don't heal from grief. I absolutely don't agree with that. And then again, with the language that we use, there's one that I hear all the time that is, there'll always be a hole in my heart. I don't like that saying, because with a hole in your heart, you won't be able to survive. And I know they don't mean that physically. I get that. But I prefer language such as, there'll always be a space in my heart for Rob. That is so different. And feel how the energy shifts when you say that. When you talk about your loved one and you're like, there'll always be a space in my heart for him. I think there is a lot to be said about the expectation that society has set over the past decades. There are cultures that do grief so well, like the Mexicans, the Japanese. There's just so many really beautiful cultures that celebrate the person's life. Yet we are in this, we are so stuck in this mud of grief, that darkness, that heaviness, we can't move forward. Says who? Just listen to the language that I'm always saying, like, just listen to the language that you use. Change your language and your healing will start. It all starts with language. It all starts with how we talk to ourselves. And it starts with allowing ourselves to heal. It starts with allowing ourselves to laugh and not feel guilty about it, not feel any shame about things. Because here's my biggest thing. Do the role reversal. If you put yourself in your husband's shoes and you look down on you, what would you want to tell her? Stay stuck in grief and cry forever? Or would you say, live your life? It's so beautiful. You still have it. That's the irony of grief. We are grieving. We are hurting because of the physical absence of our partner because of how his precious life would cut short. And then we do the same to our precious life. Why?
Yeah.
Like, we still have that precious life. Why don't we live it for us, for him, for just out of appreciation for how precious life is?
Yeah. Like the celebration of life that you did to celebrate memories and everything.
Yeah.
Continue that. Live as if you're celebrating.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of carry it on.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I have said, and in my way, I know the difference, that I will grieve until the day I die. Okay. Now, when I say that, I don't mean that I will be in a state of mourning until the day I die. Mm-hmm. But there are things about my life that I will miss, that I will, if I reflect on them, I'll have a moment of sadness until the day I die because it's all wrapped up in memories. Yeah. Okay? Yeah. Having said that, I can also say that at this point in my life, I'm happier than I have ever been.
Beautiful.
Even when Tom was here with me. Yeah. Because I've redefined myself. So that's one of those grief joy things. It's a transformation, much like the caterpillar goes through. Yeah. It's like that initial part of mourning, that very, very devastating loss, all of those emotions and everything. It's, to me, it relates to the caterpillar in the chrysalis. You know, I mean, their bodies actually break down completely. Yeah. And we kind of do something similar too. But I remember calling my daughter and saying, Stephanie, I don't know who I am anymore. I feel like I have to redefine myself.
Yes.
Everything I had, all of my routine, it's all gone. The only thing I've left are physical things. Yeah. You know, I have my job, I have my car, I have my home, but I don't have any of those intangible things anymore. And that's what I need to redefine. And I did. Yeah. I did. So we talk about that a lot on the podcast as well.
Yeah, I just want to say to that quickly, sorry, before we move on, because for me, I used to run a healing journey called Who Am I After Loss? It's exactly that. You know, it is about redefining who we are. And it's almost like you have a blank canvas all of a sudden, and you can choose whether you use the same colors again, or if you use the same colors but in a very different setting, if you add some colors, if you take some away. It is really this whole look at your life as a blank canvas. And I know a lot of people go like, I didn't ask for that blank canvas. I want my old picture back. You know, I get that. However, there is so much opportunity in redefining who you are. Yeah. There is so much choice that you can make, and it can feel extremely overwhelming at first. 100%. I hear you.
Absolutely.
And you can do that in your own time. You don't have to paint the whole canvas in one day. It takes time. You know, like every artist, they come back to the big picture, they add another layer, they let it dry, they change it, they paint over, they like, you know, there is this creative process when you allow yourself to see that from an opportunity perspective rather than a chore or something that is really heavy. Then things start to shift. I really love that you say that, the redefining yourself. I definitely went through the process myself.
Yeah. And I did not say, okay, I know who I want to be and that's where I'm headed. I had no clue.
Yes.
I had no clue.
It takes time.
So I really tried to get rid of all of the negativity in my life. Even a couple of friends that I kind of disassociated with because they were so negative and they were bringing me down and I want positive. And so I did that, you know, that is a great buzzword now, but I did. I focused on that. And in doing that, I also found that I was more open-minded. And when an opportunity came my way, I was more aware of it and had a chance to say, maybe I want to give that a try. Nothing to lose. Let's try it. And it's those little things. And then all of a sudden, here I am doing a podcast. Before I did it, I'd never even listened to a podcast. Yet there it was. You know? So absolutely, it's a whole transformation, and you know, we talk about that a lot because I've even had people come up to me after I've said that, and they said, "Can you really say that you're happier than you have ever been?" And I said, "Yes, I really can." And they said, "Why?" And I said, "Some of it is situational. I'm surrounded by my family that I love."
Yeah.
And I even live with my older daughter and her family, and I just love that. It's so much better than living by myself. Yeah. And they asked me to come live with them. They wanted me to. So it was a gift. And I just appreciate it every day. I'm doing something I love. I'm meeting such fascinating people. And it's all those things put together that have just made my life incredible where I am.
That is incredible. I love this. That's exactly, the hidden gifts in adversity that I often talk about. There is so much of that we don't always see straight away. There is, because everything takes time, the redefining yourself, the reinventing yourself, the choices that you make towards healing or not. And then when you are at a space where healing is taking place, where you allow healing into your life, there is this moment when you start turning around. And it's another one. People often say, nothing prepares you for this. And I'm like, what does it? Because then you have this moment where you are in this healing space and you turn around and all of a sudden you see all these little milestones that happened in your life that actually did prepare you for that. We often don't see them straight away, or very rarely do we see them straight away. But then when we go through our healing journey and we turn around and we're like, oh my God, here it is. I mean, Rob and I had happiest marriage for 12 years before he died. And yes, we only had 12 years, but the 12 years that we had I know it's very hard because I'm always like, don't compare, but what in those 12 years is so much more than other people had in 40 years of their marriage. And I know that for a fact because this is one of my hidden gifts in adversity, because my dad passed away when I was 20 and it was unexpected for me. I know now that he knew he was dying, but it was unexpected for me. I wasn't prepared for that. And it was hard. It was really hard. I did not grieve well. I had no idea how to grieve. I had no support. Nobody knew how to support me in that because none of my friends had experienced that. I felt I was all alone in this. And like I was the only girl it happened to at that age. I knew that was not true, but that's how I felt. So it was a very hard journey through grief. And I learned a lot of things in that. For example, to always tell people what you think and feel about them because you might not have the chance the next day. And it may have been slightly out of fear to start with, but then it turned into out of love, out of appreciation, out of gratitude. And that was the biggest wedding present that my dad could have given me, even though he was physically not around anymore, because we lived such a conscious and beautiful and present marriage and relationship. I really value that, what Rob and I had. And I know for a fact that he did too. There was not one day where I didn't tell him how much I loved him. Because I thought if I don't tell him, I'm going to burst. I can't hold this in. There's so much love for this person. So that to me is one of the many, many hidden gifts in adversity out of my dad that I took into my marriage and then had a really beautiful marriage. And then when Rob died, now I'm teaching the boys how to be present, how to celebrate life, how to make decisions based on life is so freaking precious.
I know. And a lot of that is that positive mindset that I spoke of. And if I had to go back and think of one thing that really resonated with me as I was trying to move forward and trying to heal, I love quotes from authors, from anybody. I'm a quote collector.
Same.
And I found a quote by Jamie Anderson, and I don't know the whole quote, but the last bit of the quote is that grief is merely love with no place to go. That was my light bulb moment. Because I thought that's what it feels like. I have this love. Tom used to be here, and that's where that love went. He's gone, and I still have the love in me, but there's no target for it. There's no place for it to go. So as I was going through this positivity focus in my life, I decided I needed to find places for that love to go. I needed to, almost like,
I love that.
Almost like rehoming an animal. You have to find a new target for it. Here it is, right? And that was about the time that the podcast started, and that's where a lot of the love went. It really did.
That's just beautiful. That's beautiful.
Grief something easier to talk about. And we've done that, even myself, because decades, when my mother was alive, she planned everything in the most minute detail, including her death, her funeral, everything. And it's just my brother and I are her only children. So my brother lived in Florida. I was the one that was here locally with her, and she would want to tell me about all of these details. She would want me to know all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
I was terrified of the word death.
Yeah.
I could not listen to her. I could not sit still and listen to her. And I knew it broke her heart. But I would even, those escape calls they have when you go on a blind date and you have somebody call you so you can pretend there's an emergency. I literally would have friends do that so that I could get away from my mother's conversation about death. It was that uncomfortable a topic for me.
Yeah. I understand.
And now here I am. I talk about it every day.
All the time. And it becomes, when you have lived through it, I always say there is such a huge difference between learned and lived experience. When you have lived through it, it becomes normal. For me, it's not uncomfortable, but I can feel how it's still uncomfortable for other people who haven't lived through it. So I'm going to give you a perfect example. Last night I went to the gym and I bumped into a friend of ours, and him and his wife had their 20th wedding anniversary on the 1st of April. And I was like, hey, how did you go? How did you celebrate? Wasn't it a round one? He said, a round one. I said, was it a big number? He's like, yeah, the 20th. I'm like, awesome. What did you do? And I was so happy for them because I still celebrate love. Nothing has changed in that fact. More than ever, actually, because of the awareness how precious life is. So for me, I celebrated more than ever, not less, because Rob's not around, even more so. And then I just kept walking on the treadmill, and I'm like, I had this little niggle of, did that make him feel uncomfortable? Him knowing that I'm a widow, saying, oh, happy wedding anniversary, And it's bizarre because I'm like, I love love. I will always celebrate it. And I know I had talked to a lot of widows that said it really hurts me when I see other people in love. I don't share that feeling. I'm really happy when I see others in love. And don't get me wrong, yes, there are moments where it stings a bit, where, you go out and you see everybody, like, let's say Valentine's Day, they're all lovey-dovey at their tables. It does sometimes highlight the absence of your husband.
Sure.
But mostly for me, I am just so happy for them because I just love love. And I see a couple, I do things like that all the time. There's a beautiful, iconic sea cliff bridge here in the northern Illawarra. So people who know Sydney, it's just south of Sydney. It's beautiful. And I sometimes walk across the bridge and back. And every now and then I see a couple walking hand in hand. And I remember one moment vividly, they were just so together, you know what I mean? They were so beautiful and connected. And I literally just walked past and I gave them, swamped my hands to a love heart, and I literally just, showered love all over them just by my hand gesture. And they had the biggest smile on their face. And I am not shy to tell people. And I have done things like sitting in a restaurant and writing on a napkin saying, you guys you radiate love. This is so beautiful. Don't ever take this for granted. You guys are just such a beautiful couple. Whatever it is, whatever comes out of my heart, I just pour it onto a napkin and give it to them on my way out, or I tell them. I do that all the time. My boys are so used to it. At first, they probably thought I'm a little bit crazy, but now
it doesn't embarrass them anymore.
Mom doing her thing. No, I'm actually really happy that it doesn't embarrass them anymore, which is really beautiful. So I think things like that are really important. Just share the love. Literally, I'm such a hippie chick in my heart.
Nothing wrong with that at all. Although it makes you a unique individual, I will say. But it's just beautiful. So conversation has been kind of back and forth and everything. But I think for the most part, what listeners will get, what I would like them to get, is the positivity, the love, the mindset, the fact that you can be grieving and still have a smile on your face. You can still laugh. You can recall a memory and let it make you smile. Don't hold the smile back. Just let it make you smile. And when someone asks, share the memory, in the telling, and speak their name, and everything you can do to celebrate your loved one that you've lost. Celebrate yourself. You're alive, you're living. And I loved what you said about, imagine you are them looking down on you. What would you think? What would you want to tell yourself? Give yourself permission.
What would love do?
To be happy. Give yourself to move forward. Yeah, it's incredible. So this is the time in the podcast. I'm actually going to turn the microphone over to you, and I'm going to let you speak directly to our listeners, please tell them about the books you've written. This is your time to share with them anything you'd like.
Sure.
The floor is yours.
I'll give you a little bit of understanding of what the books are about, because then you can choose more wisely if not, or which one you would like to read. So my very first book is Loving Life After Loss. That book was written literally 4 or 5 months after Rob died. So it was a book that came out of I'm going to give you that very, very quickly. I had an absolute breakdown in our kitchen one day where the funeral was over, everything was done. And there was no more, okay, what's next? And I had this meltdown moment where everything just came crashing down on me. And I literally just started screaming, like from calling it out to being louder to then screaming. I just need peace and quiet. I really craved just this peace and quiet in my heart. And it was too loud around me and too much going on, and the boys were fighting. And out of that meltdown moment, I knew instantly I needed support in this. I started seeing a positive psychologist, which was incredible for me. I saw her for about 4 months, and it was super, super helpful. She held space for me. She held space for my different grieving, wanting to focus on joy rather than the sadness, the heaviness. She got it. And one day in our session, she asked me, when I talk about the expectation of people, it's like, what does grief mean to you, Marie? And out of nowhere, I had this word empowerment come up. I'm like, wow, I didn't expect that word to come up. Like, grief, empowerment, that is bizarre. And I sort of explained it to her. There's this force that I felt when I had the meltdown, and it just bursts out of you, and some might call it primal screaming, but there's this primal force that comes with that pain that you can take to really build yourself up again. You can actually tap into that power of grief, and that's why I talk about the power of grief. And out of that, I said to her, I think I need to write a book about that. And she's like, I think you should. So that was the birth of Loving Love After Loss. I wrote about my story, how I met Rob, how I fell in love with him, how we got married, our barefoot wedding at the beach, our pictures in there, everything, our life story, and then how he died and how I dealt with it. The second book happened a couple of years later, because I then started a movement with the same title, Loving Love After Loss. I had the movement for about 5 years. And in 2022, I wrote a book called Happy Healing. So I really talked about what happened after the first book, how the movement was born, and then my 7-step process from grief to relief. It's in the book Happy Healing, the very steps that I use. So if you want something a bit more hands-on and not just the lovey-dovey story, I love my story, but I'm just saying if you need more direction on how to actually step through it, that's in Happy Healing. So you'll find that in my second. And the third book happened as I was closing down the movement, as I stepped away from the movement and then went into speaking and coaching more than anything. I put together a prompted journal called Sparks of Joy. So it's like 300 sparks in there. So every single day there's like only 2 or 3 lines.
Nice.
Something that you can do, something that you can actively do or think about, and that brings you joy. And then there's the whole page where you can have your own notes in there. So the top of the page is always the one spark of joy, and then you can journal in there. So it's a prompted journal. And people who bought it, almost everyone came back to get another one for a friend. They love that. It's such a nice little companion through life. And it's not just for people who've experienced loss. If you have a bit of, a deep need for some more joy in life, that is the sort of book that I would recommend. And then I've co-authored another 3 where I just shared my story in their books, where it was very aligned. And the 4th one that I write and publish myself will be coming out later this year. So yeah, watch that space.
Oh, that would be great. And I'm going to suggest that as you get closer to the launch of that book, that you reach out to me, come back on the podcast, and we'll promote that book a bit as well. To get you out into the airwaves.
Yeah.
Well, this has been for me a very, very touching and very insightful episode. I've enjoyed this conversation so much. It has affirmed for me kind of the path that I took that wasn't really a path. It was truly a scribbled route, back and forth and up and down and everything. Yet I just feel so good about where I am. And I know that the world is not done with me yet. I tease my doctor all the time and say, I plan on living till I'm 100 at least. But so I've got a lot of years left to do things, to accomplish things.
Yeah.
As long as my brain is working and I can talk and I can hear, that's fine with me. I'll be good to go. But for our listeners, I want you all to remember self-care. And one of the best ways for me is to think of something, whether it's a podcast to listen to, a book to read, a journal to write in, whatever it is, pick one of those and do something about it for yourself.
Yes.
And to remember to celebrate yourself. When you find yourself getting mired down in all that negativity, the very first thing you need to do is get up and change position. And in changing position, also try to change your mindset. Try to shake yourself out of that negativity. It's going to take some work. It's not going to be easy. But boy, I'm here to tell you, it is so worth it.
Yes.
So do what you can to work toward that. Take every opportunity you have to find some happy in your grief. Find some joy in your grief. Go to a park and watch little children play.
Yeah. Or out into
Go
nature.
to the zoo. Go to the zoo
Yes.
and watch the animals cavort. Watch them do silly things. Watch silly YouTube videos if that's what it takes to get you out of your funk. That's all part of self-care. So I'm just going to remind listeners that contact information for Marie will be in the podcast notes. So if you didn't have a pen beside you, don't worry about it. Just read those podcast notes. It'll be there. Connect with her. Go buy her book. I am going to order Happy Healing. I think that's the book I need right now. Even though it's been 7 years, I will do that. I think that's where I need to start with that one. And I'm going to check out the journal as well, because many people ask me about journaling. So now I've got a new recommendation for them as well.
Perfect.
Okay, listeners. I have to say goodbye. I always hate this part because I get so into what we're talking about. I just don't want it to stop. I'm like a child that way.
It's a goodbye for now.
I will say farewell. It is just a goodbye for now until next time. And I hope you join us again next time as we continue to live and grieve. Thanks so much, Marie.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you so much for listening with us today. Do you have a topic that you'd like us to cover, or do you have a question from one of our episodes? Please email us at info@asiliveandgrieve.com and let us know. We hope you will find a moment to leave a review, send an email, and share with others. Join us next time as we continue to live and grieve together.